All right. Hello there, everyone. We are back with episode three of Dynasty Done Differently. As I was telling you, Gabe, before we got on here, it's probably not the best business strategy to record two videos in a week and then not do anything for close to 2 months. But life's been a little bit busy the last couple of months for us, right? Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, a little bit. Paul got engaged.
Yeah, just some minor things.
Yeah,
I went on
it's whatever.
vacation, got engaged. Gabe's planning his own wedding, studying for exams, and working full time. So just a few minor things. But we didn't think those things would get in the way of a Dynasty Fantasy Football YouTube channel. But unfortunately, life does happen. But we're back. We're back. I appreciate any and all of you who may be tuning into this. We do plan to make it more of a regular thing, especially as the summer goes on here. Obviously, our schedules are a little bit unpredictable, but this is definitely something we want to do, and we've talked about it for a long time. So we'll try to make it a little bit more consistent. Hopefully, at least for the time being, there shouldn't be any more engagements or weddings. I mean, I know you're still wedding planning, but
Yeah,
hopefully we'll hit a little bit of a lull here. We'll see.
hopefully. Yeah.
What have you been up to, man? Any fun, exciting things to share with the people, or should we just get into this?
Uh, I can't think of anything too nuts.
Okay, you want to tell them what we're going to be doing today?
All right, yeah, sure. So today we're gonna be doing a mock draft because me and Paul actually just started a new league last week. Was it last Thursday? I think we started it.
Uh, yeah, just about a week ago.
And then currently we're in round like 21 or 22. So then we were gonna just go through a mock draft of the settings that we did for that league.
For this startup draft.
hmm Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, we know it's, startup draft season. The summer months, I feel like, are kind of the peak to do startups. And so, as Gabe said, we just started this league about a week ago. And so we're going to do a mock draft based on the settings we used for that draft. And then maybe at the end of the video, we'll actually show you guys, since, as Gabe said, we're in like the 21st, 22nd round of this startup. So we'll show you guys actually how the first couple of rounds went down in the actual league, just to kind of, reflect and compare to what our mock draft is going to look like. And so we want this to be a little bit of like an intro to startup drafts. We're not going to talk too in detail right now. I mean, we'll talk about like the settings we used, and based on those settings, what kind of our strategies were in this mock draft, and maybe just some general startup draft strategy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. So yeah, we'll kind of get started with the mock here. I guess, do you want to go over the settings first, what we did for the league?
Yeah, sure. So we did it was a Superflex league. We did PPR as a start 11, and then I think it was, how many did we end on? Was it 29 or 30 total bench
Uh,
spots with the taxis? I can't
uh,
remember.
I think it's without the taxis, but 29 total roster spots, 11
Mhm.
starters. Like you said, 12 teams, super flex, full PPR. It's actually a 2.0 tight end premium. So it's full PPR, so like 1 point per reception for wide receivers and running backs, but then it's 2 points per reception for tight ends.
Mhm.
So a pretty heavy tight end premium. We also have 0.25 points per carry, which is also a pretty heavy like point per carry bonus. So
Mhm.
that obviously is a boost for running backs and, I guess, receivers who get carries, and for rushing quarterbacks, it's another bonus for them. I think we also did 6 point passing touchdowns.
Mhm. Yeah.
So it is kind of juiced quarterback scoring between the point per carry for the mobile guys, and then the 6 point per passing touchdown for everybody else, or well, for all quarterbacks. Um, I think that's about it, right? Nothing else too crazy. I
And
mean,
the bonuses too. That was the
yeah,
only
yeah, I was
thing.
gonna say like small bonuses
Yeah.
for big plays, like 40 plus yard plays or 40 or 50 plus yard touchdowns. But nothing too crazy there.
I think that's it then. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is again, we'll get into it when we talk about the draft. It's a paid league, so these are people who, kind of know what they're doing, they have experience, they're paying a decent amount of money to join this league. So I think it'll be a good real life example to show you guys later. But for now, we'll kind of get into the mock draft based on those settings. So obviously, again, in this type of setting, like quarterbacks are of course always important in a super flex. Running backs get a big boost with the point per carry. Wide receivers, I mean, wide receivers are probably the hottest commodity in Dynasty right now outside of quarterbacks. And then with the tight end premium, it's a pretty heavy tight end premium. So the
Mhm.
starting rosters here in this type of format, we have one running back, two running backs, three wide receivers, one tight end. Is it three flex spots or four flex spots? I
Three
think
flex. Yeah, three flex.
three, and then the super flex.
Super.
So that's how you get to your start 11. but 29-man rosters overall, plus a 4-man taxi. So the rosters get pretty deep. But yeah, I guess without further ado, we can kind of get into it here. You have the 101 in this mock draft, so I don't know if it's going to be too much of a surprise, but what are you thinking here?
Um, I'm gonna go Patrick Mahomes. I think they're.
What? Shocker.
Whoa! but I mean,
Explain that. Okay.
but I mean, I wouldn't blame anybody if they took Hurts potentially. I mean, with the point per carry league, or even Allen. But I'm gonna
Yeah.
go Patrick Mahomes because he's a beast.
Makes sense, and I feel like pretty much every startup draft, or at least 90% of them, Patrick Mahomes is going to go first overall.
Yeah.
Um, and I won't talk too much on this now, but for me personally, because we'll kind of sprinkle in our own startup strategy as we go along here. For me, I think I think it's imperative if you get like one of the top 9, maybe even 10 picks. I'm really targeting quarterback there. I know usually in most drafts, like some of the other position players are going to go sooner than like the ninth or the 10th overall pick. But I think when you start off here, I think there's the first tier of QBs, which is Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts. I feel like they're kind of like their own tier. And again, I won't get too much into my own tiers right now, but I just I think it's kind of easy to break it down that way. But anyway, so if you go Patrick Mahomes first overall, I will go with the easy choice here of Josh Allen second overall. I think
Okay.
he's right there behind Patrick Mahomes, and I think he could easily even outscore him, like maybe this upcoming season. So
Okay. I like it. And then the next one, I'll go. For me, I think it's between Hurts and Burrow, but I'm gonna go with Hurts, especially with the point per carry settings as well.
right, yeah, good point. The point per carry definitely is a big boost for guys like Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar, Anthony Richardson, all those mobile
Mhm.
QBs. Um, and with that being said, because of the point per carry, I'm actually going to go Lamar here
Oh, okay.
instead of Burrow. Again, I think Burrow's great, but just with the PPC
Mhm.
and the new offense for the Ravens, I think Lamar is going to be airing it out a lot, but he's also obviously still a very mobile QB. So I'd actually take him fourth overall here.
Okay, interesting. I think I'm just gonna keep running with the quarterbacks. So I think for me next will be definitely Joey B here.
Joey B. Yeah, I like it. I like it. And then I think kind of a steal here at the 106. I'm going to take Justin Herbert.
Okay.
Um, he's not as mobile a QB, but obviously he's a very good passer. I think he and Burrow are like very similar in
Mhm.
in many ways. Good offenses. I see good things for the Chargers offense this upcoming season with the new OC, Kellen Moore. I think it's going to be a much more competent offense, and he should hopefully be he will be fully healed from the rib injury that he had last season. So I think just with good health and good weapons, even new weapons in Quentin Johnston, and a new offensive system. I like Herbert a lot. I think it's wheels up for him this year.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, because I know a lot of people were down on him last year, and a bunch of people were selling him mid-season. Like a lot of people forgot that he was what I think that's the second quarterback 2 years ago in
Yeah,
scoring. So
it was Mahomes and then Herbert a couple of years
mhm.
ago for most people. Well, I guess Josh Allen's up there too, but
Yeah.
um, now obviously I'll let you make your pick here. But I know this is where some people, I feel like these top six QBs are pretty locked in.
Hmm.
I feel like maybe specifically in this format or just in general, I think this point at the 107 is where people start considering maybe one of the elite wide receivers like Jefferson or Chase or even Kyle Pitts. Obviously, I don't want to. I'll let you make your pick here, but I just feel like this is kind of where people start thinking about that. But what are you thinking here?
Yeah, it is tough. I think I'm gonna go T Law here, and then so I think the pick will probably be hard for you then.
Push down the decision to me.
Yeah.
That's okay. I think T-Law makes a lot of sense here. Again, and this is something as we've mentioned in other videos. I think we both, but especially myself, I consider myself like a disciple of Scott Connor. I think he's the sharpest mind in fantasy football in general, and especially Dynasty. And so, he always says like the elite QBs are the hardest thing to get in Dynasty, and the cheapest opportunity to get them is in a startup draft.
Hmm.
And so again, we'll kind of talk about this more when we get to like the draft we did, but based on things that it's not like I started this. I got the idea from Scott Connor and just some other people in the community. Like my goal in a startup draft is to try and have my first round pick, but then also try to trade some of my next upcoming picks to get another first round pick so that I can draft two elite QBs. And so I won't get into like the nitty gritty of that strategy, but again, that's my objective. And so we'll talk about that more when we get to the draft later because we were kind of both able to implement strategies that we want. But
Mhm.
in general, the two main things I want to do in a startup draft, if I can, is trade up into the first round, a second first round pick to get two elite QBs. And then after that, in the kind of the middle rounds of the startup draft, so like, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, even ninth rounds, if I can, I want to trade those picks, move back, get a later pick, and tack on a 24 first. And so we'll talk about that in more detail with the other draft. I know I keep saying that, but because that's kind of some of what we did. But
Yeah.
those are my two main things. I want to get the two elite QBs, and I want to tack on 24 firsts if I can. I don't know. Did you want to add anything now about your strategy, or saving it for later?
Yeah, because actually, something that we also did for the startup was a derby style draft, so we got to pick our spots. So then I actually had the eighth spot, which I think I kind of slightly regret a little bit because then that's this pick where you're basically between Fields or taking either Chase or Jefferson. So I think I probably should have picked maybe at least seven if I wanted to be towards the back half.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then also it's interesting, and like Paul said, we'll get into it in our actual startup draft. But I was actually not able to do the two elite quarterback trading up, but then Paul was actually able to do it. So,
Well, don't spoil
so
the
you guys will see
surprise.
that.
Save that for later. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I know it kind of long-winded there, but again, I think it's important to talk about strategy. And so I guess let me just ask you really quickly again. We don't want to go too long here, but um, do you agree with what I said? Like, is that a strategy you're trying to do too, or do you try to do like, is it as important to you to get the two elite QBs, or do you prefer to go with like one elite QB and then fill out some of the other parts of your roster first?
I
What's your
agree. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because if I can, I would definitely love to get two elite quarterbacks. I just think the advantage that you have if you get two of those elite guys, where ultimately you'll most likely have those players for probably 4 or 5 years plus, or for the entirety of that league life. So I think it's really important to do that because especially in this type of league where there's point per carries and the tight ends are boosted, so it kind of pushes down those um, wide receivers a little bit. So I think it kind of makes it less imperative to kind of hit one of these guys like a CD or AJ Brown, and I think you kind of want to focus a little bit more on maybe a hero running back or getting like Kyle Pitts or Mark Andrews or something like that in the first couple of rounds.
Right. Right. Yeah, and I will say for me, pretty much regardless of format, as long as it's super flex, I'm trying to get those two elite QBs. Now, obviously, the higher the number of starters you have, the more depth you need. So, like, in this type of league that we did, like a start 11, or if you get into a bigger league, like a start 12, start 13, like you really need depth. So you're kind of paying a bigger price in those leagues if you're going to trade a lot of startup picks to move up into the first round to get another elite QB, as opposed to like let's say in a start 9 or a start 10 league, like you're smashing it out of the park just from the startup draft if you can get the two elite QBs because you have such a smaller number of starters. So you need the elite guys. You need as Scott says and Shane Manila, another one of our favorites, like they refer to them as hammers, right? Like you need hammers. So anyway, I guess back to this mock draft again. It's a start 11. Um, so depth is definitely important. But still, I think the advantage of the two elite QBs outweighs pretty much anything else, just because they're never going to be, not that they're cheap to get in the startup draft, but they're never going to be that price again. It's only going to be more expensive and more difficult to get them once the league actually goes on. So, oh, okay, I just got a sleeper notification. I'm on the clock. Startup draft, but that's okay.
Those are other
But,
draft, yeah.
yeah. You got to figure out who I'm drafting in the 22nd round or 21st round. It's very essential to my roster build. Anyway, sorry, enough distraction. So this might be a little bit of a surprising pick, but here at the 108, I'm gonna go Deshaun Watson.
Ooh,
I
okay.
know he is lower in the community, but when he, before the whole off the field issues, scandal, all that crap, he was an elite quarterback, running and passing. He was right up there with Mahomes and Josh Allen and Lamar at that time. So I think he still has that skill set. I think he's gonna have a much better season this year now that he's kind of reacclimated to being on an NFL team and playing in real NFL games. Um, and just at this point in the draft, again, it's still important to me to get an elite QB even over the elite wide receivers or a tight end or a running back. And I just think he has a little bit more job security and is a little bit of a safer pick than someone like Justin Fields, who maybe would be most people's pick here. I just think Watson is a little bit more secure. So I'll take Watson here.
Okay. Um, hmm. This is where it's tough because not to spoil it, but in our draft I actually took Fields instead of JJ or Chase, so I guess I have to probably stick with Fields here. But I think it is really tough. I think it's probably just preference or whichever guy you kind of like better, because I think Fields is an elite quarterback still, but he is obviously towards the back end. So I think here you can probably interchange him for JJ or Chase if you want to.
Right. Yeah, and obviously, right, we're not here to tell you what to do. This is what we would do.
Mhm.
And I think for both of us, right, the importance of those QBs is paramount to like pretty much everything else. So maybe you don't play that way. Maybe you have a different strategy. That's fine. That's just like for us, and especially with it being a point per carry in this league, I think you can't go wrong with Justin Fields because he's
Mhm.
gonna. I mean, he could run the ball more than any other quarterback in the league.
Yeah.
So, that advantage could be enormous. Now this I think is really where it gets tough. I know we've been saying that for a couple picks, and I bothered you last time because you said that like in the last video too. But this I think is where it really gets tough because people talk about kind of those 9 elite QBs, and they're all off the board right now. And the question for me, the question I've been debating with myself over the last few weeks or since the NFL draft is Anthony Richardson in that tier of quarterbacks? And honestly, even as Kyler Murray, I think Kyler Murray is a different discussion. I think he is, but his value is so depressed right now because of the injury, and people are worried he's going to miss most of the season, and the team's going to suck, and whatever. So I think Kyler Murray could be included in that group. I wouldn't include him there right now because I think you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot taking him in the first round of a startup draft because, again, he may not miss half the season, but I feel like you're almost kind of punting year one by drafting him. So anyway, I'm not even going to talk about him, but for me, the bigger debate is Anthony Richardson. And is he basically, does he have more upside than a Justin Jefferson or a Jamar Chase in this type of format, or even like a Kyle Pitts, Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce in this type of format? So this really is where I have a little bit more difficulty. Um, oh man, I think I think given that the 9 uber elite QBs, at least in my opinion, uber elite QBs are gone, there's enough of like this next tier of QBs that I feel like if I was picking here at the 10 spot, I'd be able to get one of those guys in the second round. So I'm actually willing to pass on Anthony Richardson here, and I'm going to take Justin Jefferson because I think he is just so elite and has so much value. Again, you have to remember, like, part of the reason why we tried to call our channel Dynasty Done Differently, we're not just focusing on points and which players are going to score more than others, but it's also about the overall strategy and playing the market of Dynasty. And so that kind of ties in a little bit here with Justin Jefferson. Like, he just has so much market value.
Yeah.
You know, he's one of the few non-quarterbacks that you could trade for an elite quarterback down the road if you wanted to. So that's another kind of reason for me to take him here. But just at this point, I think, the uber elite wide receivers are just him and Chase, in my opinion. And so I prefer to lock in one of those guys now and take my chances getting a Kyler or a Bryce Young or a Dak or something in the second round. So what are you thinking here at the 111?
I think I'm gonna go Chase, but I could see if you could. I could see if you want to take Bijan here, especially with the point per carry. I mean, as if you see here on the projected points, it looks like Chase has 9 more points than Bijan for the 23 season. But I think just Chase has secured himself as a top 2 wide receiver, and Bijan. I mean, he's one of the best prospects RB wise, for over 5 years. But I think just the shelf life of the running backs is lower than the receivers, and also we also haven't seen him play yet, so he could flop. Who knows? So I'm gonna go with Chase.
All right, makes sense. Makes sense. I like it. So now, okay, so I am at the 112 here. Also, we didn't mention this earlier, but the draft we did was a third round reversal. So it was like a snake draft, normal snake draft through the first and second round. But then the third round, in like whoever has the 101 would normally pick 301. In a third round reversal, they pick 312. So like the second round goes from, the team that picks last through, I feel like I'm not explaining it well. I feel like some of you probably know what a third round reversal is. Basically, you take the normal order of a snake draft and then reverse that for the third round. It just kind of gives a little bit more of an advantage, or at least tries to help out some of the teams that were picking later in the first round, since they don't have access to those, the highest echelon of players,
Mhm.
just to kind of even things out. So we can get to that when we get to there in this mock draft and the actual draft. But so at the 112 here, I'm debating a couple things. Like you said, the
Mhm.
shelf life of running backs is concerning. But also, now this is if you guys use Sleeper, this is something I like to do on Sleeper. Gabe, I know you do this too, is to sometimes so you're in this league, you have the settings and the scoring settings, and then you can go and look at the leaders in points per game from last season based on those
Mhm.
scoring settings. And so
Right.
I did that for this league. And what I saw, the points per game leaders across all positions, at the top, it's the elite quarterbacks, which I think that's not too surprising. Um, and then you have a couple of the super elite running backs. So like last year's Eckler, McCaffrey, Josh Jacobs, those types of guys. And then other than that, you have tight ends. So like Travis Kelce, I think was the fourth or fifth highest scoring player out of anyone in points per game. Now, I'm not going to take Travis Kelce here, but I'm just speaking to like the value of the tight end position in this type of league. Um, Now, I think, are you cool since, well, yeah, okay. I'll just do the one pick here. Because I was gonna say, like, if I'm actually picking in the 12 spot,
Mhm.
what I'd probably try to do here is go QB and tight end. That's probably what I'd
Okay.
assume if Chase and Jefferson are gone. If
Yeah.
Chase or Jefferson are there, I'd take one of them. But I'd probably go QB tight end here. But since I'm just making the one pick, since we're going back and forth for the mock draft, I am going to go. Oh man. Um, this one is tough. I think I'm gonna go Anthony Richardson. I
Okay.
just think at the end of the day, the QB advantage is too hard to ignore. And I think with the rushing capabilities, and especially in a point per carry league, he has the capability to truly be a difference maker. Um, so yeah, I just don't think I can pass up on him there.
Yeah, because I was as you were talking, I pulled up the 2022 stats for for this league's settings, and it's pretty wild. There's actually four running backs in the top 10. So that, yeah, Kelsey is five. There's four quarterbacks. There's Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, and then Burrow, and then it was Kelsey, then Eckler, CMC, Jacobs, Geno Smith, and then Derrick Henry.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. So I mean,
It's just
again, that shows you
interesting.
the importance of running backs in a
Hmm.
point per carry league, and especially like 0.25 is a pretty heavy point per carry, um, like premium. So
Yeah.
it doesn't surprise me that the running backs are there. And again, like this would be different if I was actually picking at the 12 spot and I had two picks in a row here. As I
Hmm.
said, I'd probably still go quarterback, tight end, but I wouldn't blame anyone for going running back. I just think since we're going like individual picks at a time here, Anthony Richardson would be my next highest valued player.
Yeah, so after talking about the running backs, I'm gonna go Bijan there at the 201.
Yeah, fair. Not surprising. I can't blame you after just talking about how they were fourth and in the top 10.
Yeah.
Uh, I cannot blame you there. Okay. And then again, at this point, I think after Chase and Jefferson, some of the wide receivers are in a fairly like even range.
Hmm.
Like, I think CD and AJ Brown, Garrett Wilson, some of those dudes, they're like elite, but they're not uber elite to the point where I take them over a tight end. So I'm going to take Kyle Pitts here,
Ooh. Okay.
first tight end off the board. Um, and again, depends on your strategy. If you want to go like truly win now, I don't blame someone for taking Kelsey as the first tight end. But I just again with the shelf life and with the way I like to play Dynasty, I prefer to have someone who's younger and maybe hasn't produced to that level yet, but could get there, as opposed to someone who probably has a year, maybe two left before the wheels fall off. So yeah, Kyle Pitts there for me.
Mm. Yeah, I think this is where it gets tough in the second round, because then I think this also actually accentuates our plan of basically trading and trying to get into the first twice. Because then most likely to do that, you'll probably have to trade at least your second and your third, and then probably either your fourth or your fifth. So I think this actually accentuates that of where I think this is a pretty flat tier overall in the second through the third. So then if you can do something like you trade, let's say your team six here, you trade your 207, 307, and your 507 for the 105, and then you get like the 708 and then 908 or something like that. I
Yeah.
think that would be a great trade.
Right. Yeah. And again, we'll get to it later, but that's kind of some of the stuff we tried to do in our actual startup. And again,
Mhm.
those are things like Scott Connor talks about too, of trying to, yeah, because it is a relatively flat tier. Like there's still difference makers. There's still very good players at this, in these rounds, but I just don't think it compares to the advantage of having the two elite quarterbacks. Because
Mhm.
at that, if you have two of the top nine, let's say, th- there's a very good possibility that there's no other team in the league that can match you at the quarterback position, or maybe at most like one or two teams. So I think
Yeah.
it's through advantage. But anyway, sorry, I don't want to interrupt you here, but what are you thinking with
Oh,
the
that's
pick?
okay. Well, then also, I wanted to bring up one other thing. That was tough for me, um, especially since we did a derby style. It was pretty hard to actually pick a spot because I was actually third and Paul was fourth to pick. So we had most of it because I think it was 1 and 2, and then I had all the options available. So it was tough because I was thinking about trying to implement the two elite quarterback strategy. I was trying to think about potentially because then with the third round reversal, I thought if I picked like the 103 or the 104, that somebody might not like the like 211 and the 311 as much potentially in a trade compared to like the 304 and the 204. So that was something that I was trying to process in our startup. So I think that's something that's interesting. But honestly, after talking about the flat tier here, maybe I should have just gone, maybe in the top 3 or 4, because then the 210 and the 209 really aren't that different from up here. But it's tough because I guess some people might perceive these picks to be better since the numbers are lower. That's what's
Yeah.
hard to weigh.
Well, I mean, yeah, let's get into that in more detail when we actually go through the draft. But
Yeah.
I feel like to an extent, I don't know, maybe you kind of galaxy brained it a little bit, like you were thinking too hard. Which I mean, I don't
Yeah,
blame you.
maybe.
It's the same thing, but anyway, yeah, we can get to that when we get to the actual draft. But you're right. Again, the point is it's kind of like a flat tier here. Again, there's
Mhm.
still difference makers, but it might not give you the same advantage as two elite quarterbacks would.
This pick's hard. Um,
Eventually, if we keep making these videos, I'm gonna start a drinking game where every time you say this pick is tough or this one is tough, I'm gonna make you take a shot.
Jeez. Wait, why the heck does CD have a projection of 184? That seems low.
I don't know, my friend.
Hmm. Um, it's tough to decide between a running back or a wide receiver here.
So, but are you down to those two positions basically?
Yeah, I think because I guess if we take a look at the quarterbacks, we next up we kind of have Bryce Young, Dak, Stroud, Tua, or Kyler.
Hmm. Well, again, so you've narrowed it down to running back or wide receiver.
I think so because I think some of these guys, I think I'd rather wait. I think this is kind of in the same tier, so I'd probably like to take these guys closer to the end of the second.
Hmm.
Um, especially since somebody like Bryce Young hasn't even played yet. I think taking him at the 203 is kind of early.
Okay.
Or because then that's what's interesting in a startup. If you obviously because right now we're just doing the best player available, but then obviously in an actual startup, team 10 is taking this entire column. So then if you want to take like two quarterbacks here, or you could try to tank and take AR and Bryce Young or something like that. Um, it's all right. So enough rambling. I think I'm
Yeah,
gonna take.
yeah. Go ahead. Because yeah, we're just doing best player available. So whoever you
Yeah.
think is the next most valuable player.
Uh, I'm gonna go Breeze.
Brees Hall. Okay.
Yeah.
I
I,
think it makes sense.
I
I
think
think
he's
it makes
probably the next highest valued RB here.
sure. Okay. I don't know if this will be a hot take because I had a feeling you wouldn't take this guy, so I kind of knew I was going to be taking him next. Give me some Mark Andrews,
Oh,
baby.
I knew it
Did
as
you
soon as
really?
you said it.
Oh yeah. I mean, just with the heavy tight end premium, I really think. Listen, with Kelsey, Mark Andrews is my tight end one in Dynasty personally. With Kelsey being as old as he is, and people kind of expecting the fall off, and
Hmm.
with Kyle Pitts having so much upside, but literally having not done jack squat in his first 2 years in the NFL so far, I think Mark Andrews is a perfect medium between the two. He's older, he has a proven history of production, but he's what is he like 27, 28? He's 27, so he's nowhere near Kelsey in terms of age. So anyway, I just think having that tight end advantage here is much more valuable than kind of a flat tier of wide receivers. And honestly, after the first two running backs, after Bijan and Brees, I think the running backs are fairly even too. I think maybe you can include McCaffrey there too, but with his injury history, I prefer the tight end here.
All right, so I have the stats up here. Where do you think Mark Andrews fell last year in terms of points? Where was he ranked out of
Points per
everybody?
game, like points per game for the entire like all across all positions.
Yep.
He's probably pretty far down, I would imagine. Last year was kind of an
Hmm.
off year for him, and especially with Lamar missing time. Um, I'd guess he was probably outside of like the top 25.
44. Yeah, it's pretty far down, which is wild.
Yeah. But again, like remember that point per game, it like on sleeper, it doesn't filter out the guys who played like one or two games or something. Um, so you got to be careful with that. But I mean, regardless, I think we know Mark Andrews is a beast and a difference
Oh
maker.
yeah.
But yeah, that's interesting. All right, so Mark Andrews off the board. What are you doing here? Can't say it's a tough choice. I'm kidding.
Um, that's what's hard about the tight ends because then I was genuinely curious on where he fell in terms of total points. Yeah, he was 44 last year. So it's interesting in these tight end premium leagues that you, because I mean, but then the prior year he had 404 point. He had 408 points in 2021, and he only had 264 last year. So I just think the his ceiling is insane in this type of format. It's probably why you'd want to take him this early.
Oh yeah, and I mentioned this earlier when I brought up Lamar, but with the new offense, I think they're going to be throwing it even more.
Hmm.
And I know they brought in new wide receivers, but I still think Mark Andrews is Lamar's number one target. So I think he has a very high ceiling for this upcoming season, and just in general, obviously in Dynasty.
Right, exactly. Yeah, because then for comparison, JJ last year had 371 points in this league. So in 2021, Mark Andrews had 408. So he would have beat JJ last year for
Yeah,
comparison purposes.
shows you the tight end advantage.
Um, I think I'm gonna go JT here. Oops,
Okay,
going
your
back to the
third
running
running back,
backs.
third running back in a row.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay, so you'd go JT over McCaffrey. Is that because of age?
because of age, yeah,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
market value.
Sure. See, I feel like for me personally, I would actually take CMC over Jonathan Taylor
Okay.
because let's see. Well, hold on, let me tie it in here. Hmm. Actually, I will take McCaffrey with this next pick, so I'll talk
Okay.
about it first. Um, but I would take CMC over Jonathan Taylor because I think CMC has a higher ceiling this upcoming season.
Hmm.
And Scott Connor's talked about this. Other people talk about this. This is kind of the philosophy I adhere to as well. I think like running backs are just so volatile that you might as well take it year by year. Like
Yeah.
for me, what looking at a running back, I actually even in a startup draft, I don't really care about age. Like I do to an extent because obviously the younger guys might have, more years of production, but outside of like the elite guys like Brees, Bijan, I guess you could throw in JT in there, maybe a couple other guys. Like I'm just looking at it as who can score more points for me this year. And again, Jonathan Taylor's a beast, but he's not a spring chicken anymore, but in terms of NFL running back age.
Yeah.
And I think McCaffrey can outscore him. So I would take McCaffrey over Jonathan Taylor. I don't blame you for taking Taylor first. I think the age, they are several years apart in age. But um, anyway, so I'll take McCaffrey here because of the running back advantage, and I just think he's a difference maker at his position.
Um, I think I'm gonna go.
Oh yeah, sorry,
What's
sorry. I
it?
was just gonna be really quick. Like, I guarantee you would never be able to get like CeeDee Lamb or AJ Brown or Garrett Wilson at this point in a startup draft.
No.
So maybe you're drafting with us apparently, but I guarantee they'd be gone before this point. But sorry, what were you saying? What were you thinking?
I think I'm gonna go to the wide receivers here now. So
Yeah.
I was considering Saquon, basically following up exactly what you said about CMC. But I think, like you said, I think just with market value wise, you also have to weigh the fact that most people are probably going to view like AJ Brown, CD, Garrett Wilson way ahead of these RBs,
Mhm.
even with the format.
Right.
So I'm gonna go CD here.
There you go. Again, Dynasty done differently, right? We're thinking beyond just who's going to score more points. We're
Mhm.
also thinking in terms of the market value. And you're right, CeeDee Lamb has crazy value. And another thing, in this type of format, like with that heavy PPC, and I think people drafted this way where they didn't realize the I guess you could even call it like an advantage at times that the running backs have over the wide receivers. Like
Yeah.
these guys, a lot of people were drafting wide receivers before some of these elite running backs even, and I think it's because maybe they're not as familiar with the format, or like they don't maybe fully understand how much the format can affect things. But anyway, with that being said, I'm also gonna go wide receiver here. I'm gonna go Garrett Wilson.
Ooh,
Um,
okay.
again,
Wow.
oh shit, actually.
No?
We don't do that. I thought AJ Brown was off the board. I would do AJ Brown before
Okay.
Garrett Wilson.
I was gonna say that's kind of wild.
Yeah,
Wilson
yeah,
over
no,
AJ
no.
Brown.
As if Garrett Wilson doesn't already have enough hype. No, I'd go AJ Brown here. Again, a very elite wide receiver, and I think one of the few guys that could be a difference maker even in this type of format, and is valued very highly. So, and he's still young. I mean, AJ Brown's 25. Like he's freaking younger than we are, or well, than I am.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, AJ Brown here.
Um, I think Kelsey's tough in this type of league because yeah, last year he was literally fifth in points. I think this is where I take Kelsey.
I was about to say, if you don't take him
Yeah.
here, I'm taking him next.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Okay. All right. Yeah. Again, I don't think you can pass up the tight end advantage here. Um. Oh man. See, just because you were going over the top point per game scores from last year, and
Mhm.
the position that was the least represented in like the top 10 or 20 was wide receiver.
Exactly. Mhm.
I'm not tempted. I mean, I am tempted to take Garrett Wilson here, but I'm actually going to take Saquon over him, just because of the running back advantage. I think Saquon can
Okay.
probably fairly comfortably outscore Garrett Wilson this season. Again, I think Garrett
Mhm.
Wilson is a great player to have on your team as a commodity for his trade value, and I think he will be good too. But just with the PPC, I think I prefer the running back here.
Because yeah, it's interesting. There were only two wide receivers in the top 20. JJ was at 13, and then Tyreek was at 20 in terms of total points, which is really interesting.
Yeah,
And then the
and
rest are
here,
quarterbacks and running backs, and then Kelsey in there as well.
yeah, yeah. Now you have to make this next pick, but technically it's the slot I chose, so I can just put the player in for you if you know who you're
Oh,
taking.
okay. um, I think I'm gonna go Tyreek here.
Tyreek, okay.
Yeah, I'll go Tyreek.
All right. Kind of an elite difference maker at the wide receiver position.
Yeah, and I think some people are being slightly dramatic about him announcing his retirement in 3 years, but that's still 3 years away. That's a long time.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's a common mistake that people make, and this can apply to startup drafts. People play Dynasty, I think, in too big of a window sometimes.
Mhm.
Like people act like, I'm going to draft this guy and he's going to be a stud on my team for the next 8 to 10 years.
Yeah.
A, you don't know how long the league is going to last. B, things change so quickly in the NFL. You have no idea what team he's going to be on, how he's going to be producing, like what the coaching scheme is going to be. Like, I think it varies by position. I think running backs are an even shorter window, but for the most part, I don't think you can play dynasty beyond like a 3-year window. I
Yeah,
just
that's true.
I think it doesn't make sense at that point. So the big three tight ends are gone. I think there's a teardrop after that. So I'm not necessarily like rushing to try to get the guy who I think is the next highest here, whether that's Hawkinson or Kittle or Kincaid, even. Jesus Christ, people are blowing Kincaid out of the water with his 80 here. But anyway, I digress. I think we've waited way too. No, did you put in Dalton Kincaid?
I did.
This is not my pick. You're good today. I think, and honestly, I feel like I don't know about you, but I feel like I kind of regret going so many picks without taking another quarterback.
Hmm.
Uh,
I read your mind.
hindsight, I don't think I would have done that. Um, but I am gonna go Bryce Young here.
That's a
Again,
good
we
pick.
haven't seen him play an NFL game. I know you mentioned that earlier, but drafted first overall, should have a long, many opportunities to start, even if he's not good. And again, just the positional scarcity at the QB position. Honestly, I can't speak for you. I probably should have taken Bryce Young or another QB earlier in the second round.
I think
Uh,
so. Mhm.
feel like maybe I kind of got too set on the wide receivers and running back, but
Yeah, me
um,
too.
anyway. All right, so Bryce Young, that closes out our second round. Okay, so moving to the 301. So again, this is third round reversal. So going back to the team that has Anthony Richardson and Bijan Robinson, who you're taking here? Again, best player available, not like actually building out a team, but
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I think I was mainly just looking at the positional players instead of the quarterbacks. I think I think probably should have taken more of the quarterbacks. At least Bryce Young probably there for sure.
Well, if I can just make a quick point, I mean, to be fair though, like you said, like the highest scoring players last year in this league were the elite quarterbacks, but
Yeah.
other than that, like there were definitely some in the top 10 or the top 20, but a lot of the other ones were running backs and tight ends and a couple wide receivers. So
Mhm.
it's like the reason you want to take these quarterbacks early beyond like the elite nine or however many you have in your elite tier is because of the positional scarcity. It's not necessarily because we think Bryce Young, especially in his rookie season, I don't think he's going to be a top 10 point per game scorer across the entire league, but I just think the positional scarcity is valuable there. So
Mhm.
again, I think, yeah, in hindsight, we both would have taken a couple of them a little bit earlier, but it also depends on your team build and how you like to play Dynasty, especially if you get one of those elite QBs in the first round. You may not want to take another QB in the second round. You may prefer to go for a difference maker at a different position. But anyway, sorry for that. Go ahead with
No, that's okay. Um, I think here I'm gonna go back to the wide receivers. I think I'm gonna go Garrett Wilson, primarily because of the market value. People are going nuts over him.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Okay. Um, I am pretty much debating running back. I mean, sorry, wide receiver or quarterback now.
Okay.
I'm between Amon-Ra because I think he also has a lot of value, and then another quarterback. Man, at the end of the day, oh, I just believe in Kyler Murray. I think he's being discounted way too much in fantasy, so I would take him
Yeah.
here. I mean, I've heard other again. I don't have the stats. I've heard other people bring up the stats, but like when first of all, he's never been beyond a top eight quarterback in point per game scoring when he's played. And he's like, I think he has a higher point per game average for his career than like Justin Herbert. And we're taking Justin Herbert at the 106. So again, I know the ACL is a concern. I know the offense is a concern, but especially with it being a PPC point per carry league, and he runs the ball. He may run less after the ACL injury, but I still think he's going to run the ball. And he's an elite dual threat quarterback. So I don't think I can pass up on him here. I know it's a risky pick, but I just think his value and his upside and what he's shown in the past is worth taking him here.
Yeah, this is where it's tough, you know.
Frank, take a shot. I had a feeling you were going to say that. How did I know you were going to say that?
Yeah, this is where it's tough to go Dak or Stroud, or going another wide receiver, even Gibbs here potentially.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and again, we get hung up on the player names, right? Like you and I do, most people do when they play Dynasty. But at the end of the day, it's more about like our rankings, our preferences are different from each other's and from everybody else's. It's more so about the general strategy and how we're approaching, the startup and knowing these players' trade values, not just the points they're projected to score. But looks like you took Dak.
I did Dak, yeah.
Okay, what's the rationale there?
I think just looking at these other positional players, I think they're all kind of in the same tier. Like we said before, I think this is a very flat tier. A lot of them, I think, are kind of have the same value / are going to score the same amount of points. So especially the guys with higher market value over here, like Waddle or Olave or Amon-Ra, I don't think are going to score as many points as somebody like maybe like Cooper Kupp or something like that down here. So I think I'm going to go back towards the quarterbacks. I think we're probably letting them fall a little bit too much here
I
into the
agree.
draft.
Yeah. We got three of them in the last four picks. So, okay. Well, I am still debating Amon-Ra here because I think he's the next highest wide receiver versus C.J. Stroud, and I'm having a tough time with it because I feel like Amon-Ra is part of a tier of wide receivers that are very similar. I don't think he's necessarily a difference maker. C.J. Stroud, I think, could be the last of a tier here, but he also, like, I just don't personally project him to have a very great rookie season. He doesn't have many weapons, not a great offensive line. Historically, not the best, team franchise for being like playing winning football. So I could see his value going down between now to next offseason. But then also like after him, I see a tier break between him and then like Tua with his injury concerns, Daniel Jones. I've just never been a huge believer in, and then you're getting into guys like Kirk Cousins and Jared Goff. So I'm not even considering those guys right now. At the end of the day, I'm just gonna go with my thing I was saying earlier about the positional scarcity. I'll go with the quarterback, C.J. Stroud. I feel like if I pass up on Amon-Ra here, I'd have better opportunities later in the draft to get starting caliber wide receivers who can give me most of the production that Amon-Ra can compared to maybe later some of those quarterbacks. So I'll take Stroud here. 3 quarterbacks in a row there for us. How about that?
Yeah. um, hmm. I think it's too early for Hawkinson yet. And then the next quarterback is, like you said, Tua and Daniel Jones. I think it's probably a little too early for me to take those guys. So I'm between the running backs and the wide receivers here. This is where it gets hard to consider the market value, because I think a lot of people aren't going to think about the format as much as we probably are, and most people aren't going to transition over to the format settings, where I think they're probably still going to overvalue these wide receivers, and especially the young guys like Waddle, Amon-Ra, Olave. So I think I'm going to go with the wide receivers here. So I think the next running backs are kind of iffy. So like Gibbs, it's his first year. Who knows how he's going to do? But he also has a lot of value. Eckler is getting up there in age. Ken Walker has Charbonnet now, and then ETN also had a rookie join his team. Josh Jacobs is also getting up there in age, but he's also a beast too. So I think
like
I'm
we were talking about earlier, it's a flat tier. Like all these guys.
Yeah.
So like if you sat there and went through the rest of the running backs, the next
Yeah.
20 in AEP, like you could find a concern with every single one. So
Exactly.
it's more about like you said, your projections for this year, how you think these guys are going to do this year, but also then the market value.
Hmm. I think I'm gonna go Amon-Ra here next.
Yeah, that's the pick I would have made there too. I think that makes sense. All right, well I guess I'm kind of similar dilemma with the wide receivers and like how they are in this format versus how much people value them. Um, Again, at the end of the day, like I'm gonna opt for what I think will actually score me more points
Hmm.
as opposed to what I think could get me more in trades. But I think you need to be mindful of both options here. But
Right.
like if I was just drafting for who I think would have more name value, or maybe more trade value if people don't know the format, I would take a wide receiver. I'd probably take Chris
Mhm.
Olave or Jalen Waddle. But knowing the format, I think I prefer a running back. And at that point, it's between Gibbs and Eckler.
Mhm.
And see, I'm kind of talking myself through this right now because Gibbs is more highly valued in Dynasty, but I tend to kind of treat running backs like a 1 year window. Um, Man, it's tough. I think at the end of the day, with it being a point per carry league, Austin Eckler has less competition for carries. I think they're both going to be elite pass catching weapons, but I think Eckler's going to get more carries, so I'll take Eckler here. I don't really care about the age as much. Again, it's a 1 year window. I think Eckler's going to help me compete more this year than Gibbs would. And even like not to get on a tangent here, a soapbox. I mean, I probably the more you have talked to me, Gabe, and the more other people like
Mhm.
listen to me or hear me talk about fantasy or especially dynasty, like I kind of come off as like a running back hater, which is not really a
Yeah.
unique thing in today's market. I think a lot of people play dynasty in a way where they fade the running backs. Um, but I just like we saw with Brees has maintained most of his value. But like look at a guy like Javonte Williams, a guy like J.K. Dobbins, like these young running backs who are thought to be studs, and then it's one
Mhm.
serious injury, and they fall down the rankings significantly. And
Mhm.
so, I'm not saying that's going to happen to Gibbs. Obviously, you can't predict injury, but like, what if that does happen? Why would I sacrifice a year of Eckler, who I think can still produce at an elite level, for a guy who's younger that it might not even benefit me in the short term or the long term. But I'll get off my soapbox. I just wanted to make that point. I am a little bit of an RB hater. I will admit to
Yeah.
that.
It's important though, because I think that after listening to podcasts and videos the last few months, I think that's something I can improve on. I think, based on my own leagues that I've you know that I've been in, I think that's probably something I can improve on. Is probably to think less about the age as much, and also think more about the windows. Because, like you said, a lot of these leagues probably aren't going to last more than 3 or 4 years potentially. And also, you also still want to win the game at the end of the day. You don't want to turn into this perpetual rebuilding roster every single year and be in the middle of the pack every single year.
Exactly. No, I hear you. I agree.
Which will happen if you take like Olave and somebody like Ken Walker or Devonta Smith,
Well,
JSN here.
I don't think you can say
That's,
it will happen, but it
no,
depends.
yeah,
It could happen. It could happen.
Mhm.
Yeah, depends on what you believe of these players, right? But
Yeah,
the overall picture, the big picture, is what you were saying, right? That you don't want to be caught in a perpetual rebuild.
yep.
The eventual goal is to win, and so age plays a factor in dynasty, but you
Mhm.
can't just always value age over productivity, unless you want to be in a perpetual rebuild. Which in that case, please play more leagues with us because I'll take your dues every year, and I'll go win my championship while you rebuild and have all those picks on your team. But anyway, I digress. I'm sorry. Go ahead. What's your pick?
I'm gonna go Waddle here.
Okay, I like it. So you have Waddle over Olave.
I do, yeah.
Okay. I'm debating Olave, but again,
Mhm.
given the format, I'm gonna go with Jahmyr Gibbs here. Um, Again, I just think that the running back is more important at this position, and he's already valued as like a top 5 running back, I think, on Keep Trade Cut and many
Mhm.
other people. So, you know, I I like where he's at. I'll take Gibbs.
I was between Gibbs and Waddle there as well.
Okay.
How about for these next picks? How about we just like crank out a bunch of these and just bang out like the half of the fourth round right now,
Yeah, because we're
and then
only
talk
like
about it.
we're like 50 minutes
Yeah.
in. Yeah, no, I hear you. Let's just crank out the picks.
Let's just pick players and then we can talk about the strategy after that.
Sure, makes sense.
Because then, like we've been saying, I think this tier is ultimately kind of flat, and then we can kind of talk about some of our picks kind of overall after we make maybe like the most of the fourth round here.
Sure.
So here, I think I'm gonna go Chris Olave.
Okay. All right. That makes my decision easy. I'm gonna go T.J. Hawkinson,
Ooh, okay.
tight end. Okay. Now you tell me what you want, and I'll pick it since this is technically the team I have in the draft.
Oh, okay. Give me Josh Jacobs.
Josh Jacobs. All right. I love it. Um, let's see. Okay. I am going to go. Oh man, I'm between Tua and Daniel Jones.
Hmm.
I'll go Daniel Jones. Tua just scares me, which I know is like a lame argument at this point, but I'll go Daniel Jones.
That's what I was thinking there too. Yeah, I think this is probably where I would go Danny Dimes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's crank out this fourth round, baby.
Um, what other RBs do we have here next? I'm gonna go Nick Chubb. He's older, but I mean he's been an absolute freaking monster the last couple of years, and then a point per carry, he's scoring loads of points in
Yeah.
this format.
That is very true. Okay. I am gonna go with I'm gonna go with Stephon Diggs.
Okay.
I think he's still 28. He's not that old, and he's
Mhm.
producing at an elite level. As long as he shows up to minicamp. I don't know if you heard those.
Yeah.
The coach is quote very concerned. Anyway, all right.
I think he showed up though, right? I think yesterday or
did.
today he
Yeah,
finally
it was
showed
like for
up.
1 day. I mean, there's something going on there, but
Mhm.
again, doesn't affect the pick here.
Um, I don't love Najee with his efficiency issues, but I kind of like Najee here with the point per carry. I think
Okay.
he's gonna see an insane workload this year since they didn't draft a running back.
Sure. Okay. Give me Dallas Goddard. Again,
Ooh.
kind of leaning into the tight end premium, and I think Goddard is a little underrated.
Mhm.
He is my tight end 5 in Dynasty. Like
Okay.
I'd take him over Kittle, definitely over Dalton Kincaid and
Mhm.
the other guys. Anyway, all right, I'll keep it short.
Um, it's hard to know where to pick Tua. I think I'm gonna take him here.
Kind of the ultimate wild card, right?
Yeah.
But it could pay off. I mean, 2 on the fourth could be a steal,
Yeah.
or it could sink your team.
Exactly.
He's one of those players. Um, but no, he was pretty elite last year with those weapons when he was healthy. So I think it's a good pick. Um, Dang. Okay. Got to be true to my guns here and not just take players because of age.
Hmm.
Um, I'll go Cooper Cup. Um,
Okay.
Using at an elite level. Again, one of the few wide receivers that I really think can be a difference maker.
Yeah. Trying to see who's up next at these different positions here. I kind of view a lot of these guys as pretty similar.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go ETN actually here.
I was thinking about him. Okay. All right. Um, I will go T. Higgins.
Okay. Yeah, I like it. Um, I like sorting by points on Sleeper too. I think can be really helpful in startups to kind of compare the ADP and the people who they project are going to score the most points.
So those are projected points you're looking at?
Yeah, for the 23 season. I think I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go Derrick Henry here.
Whoa. 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 Okay. I was not expecting that. Dang. Well, I am gonna go. I am gonna go. I am gonna go cry. No, I'm kidding. um, Dang, I'm definitely going running back here. I will go. Just give me Tony Pollard again. At
Okay.
the end of the day, these guys are so very similar. Like this is why we're talking about. It's a flat
Yeah.
tier. Eric Henry, Tony Pollard, Ken Walker, Ramondre. Like they're placeholders, in my opinion. They're placeholders.
Hmm.
It's just at that point, it's just who do you prefer over another? Who do you project is going to score more points than another? And that's, in my opinion, taking out most of the strategy of it or the roster construction. But anyway, sorry, I'll save my tangents for later.
No,
All
that's
right,
okay.
last pick here, my friend. What are you doing at the
Um,
4th 11? Who's worthy of being in the fourth round of a startup draft?
I feel like these can't be right. I don't know if the tight end bonuses didn't go over to this mock draft. Kittle scoring 110 points.
I don't think they did. Well,
Yeah, that
why
doesn't
are you
sound
looking
right.
at projected points, man? That's all
I'm
projected.
just This
That's
is
all
weird.
projected. You think
Um,
Sleeper knows better than you do?
um, I think I'm gonna go Devonta Smith here. He's falling
Okay,
a
and
little
that
too
makes
far.
it easy. I will go Ken Walker with the last pick of the fourth round.
All right.
Uh, Still think he's a young, fairly elite running back, but
Mhm.
again, kind of a placeholder in my opinion. All right, so those are our first 4 rounds. I don't think we have to recap all the picks, but do you want to just briefly discuss like general strategy?
Yeah, sure. Should we just jump over to our startup and talk about it?
Yeah, I just want to, before we do that, I just want to hammer in one point. I know
Okay.
I said some of this earlier, um, and some of this, so these first two ideas are Scott Connor's ideas. I've heard him talking about them on his podcast, on his shows. They're not my original ideas. I feel like I'm gonna name drop him very often in these videos that we make because I just love his work and I follow what he does a lot. But so he says when you're making startup trades, right? So like for example, we were talking about earlier how we both like to trade up into the first round to try to get a second elite quarterback. He has two golden rules that he says you should not break when trying to make any trades in a startup, and I agree with him. Number one, do not give up more startup picks than you're getting back. So if you're giving up 3 startup picks to move up into the first round, you should be getting 3 startup picks back. Now, obviously, if you're moving up, you might be giving up picks in earlier rounds than the picks you're getting back. Those are probably going to be in later rounds. But if no matter how many startup picks you give up, you want to get the same number back in the trade because you don't want to throw off your roster construction and have fewer picks
Hmm.
in the startup than everybody else. The second thing he says, never give up your future picks. So if you want to move up into the first round and someone says they're going to need a couple startup picks plus your 24 first or your 25 first or whatever, he says never to do that. Don't give up your future capital because that handcuffs you, right? Then you don't have like the future first, the future draft picks, rookie picks are kind of like they're outs. They're safety nets, right? In case things don't go right. So those are his two golden rules. And again, the two main things I'm trying to do in these first few rounds, I'm trying to trade up to get an elite QB. If necessary, I will trade my second, third, and fourth round startup picks, and I'll get the other person's first, and I'm even willing to go down to like their sixth or seventh and their ninth or 10th. I'm willing to. I
Hmm.
want to stay within the top 10 rounds, but that's what I want to do. And I'm willing. That's as high as I'll go. I'm willing to give my next 3 startup picks, the second, third, and fourth round, and I'm willing to go down as far down as their 10th. But again, I want to get as the same number of picks as I'm trading away. I want to get that same number back, and obviously the goal is to get a second first round pick to get an elite quarterback. And then I'll talk about this more when we get to the draft that we did. But the other thing I'm trying to do is trade back. So like let's say I trade my second, third, and fourth round pick. Once my fifth round pick comes up, or even before it comes up, I'm trying to move that. I'm trying to move, let's say, from a fifth to a seventh and tack on someone else's 24 first. But we'll get into that in a couple minutes. But was there any like just big picture strategy stuff that you wanted to throw in? Or I mean, I feel like this is part of the reason you and I can't really ever trade with each other because we're always trying to do the same thing. So
Exactly.
it doesn't make sense for us to trade with each other because we want the same things. But
Yeah.
I know you're kind of on board with most of the stuff I talked about. But is there anything else or like just any other strategy points that you think would be helpful to talk about?
I would just add on, yeah, I think also with those golden rules, I think it's especially good to not trade away your future capital, especially if you're doing the two elite quarterback build. Because sometimes, depending on how that team goes during the first year, it might not be able to really compete. But then for the second year, if you have accumulated these 24 first, then you get to draft a lot of high caliber players, and your team is probably going to be a monster in the second years. And then you still have Patrick Mahomes and Justin Fields in the second year, even if you didn't have enough of the supplemental guys during your first year.
Right, exactly. Because what are the easiest positions to acquire in Dynasty? Running back and wide receiver.
Yeah.
If you build this way and you have the elite QBs out of the way, yes, you will not have as good running backs and wide receivers as pretty much every other team in the league, and we'll show a real life example of that in a few minutes here with my team. But you have the elite quarterbacks to keep you in contention. Hopefully, you can get an elite or close to elite tight end, and then if you pick up those extra draft capital or those extra picks, like you can use those during the season to trade for players that you need if you want to go for a championship run. Or that's the right way, in my opinion, the right way to do a productive struggle. Have those elite quarterbacks nailed down. Maybe you don't win for your first year, but having those future picks, like you were saying, Gabe, gives you the flexibility. You can go all in and compete and give up those picks to get players that'll help you win the championship, or you can maybe be a borderline playoff team, but then you have those picks for the next season to like you said, turn your team into a monster for the following season. So I think without any further ado, we should probably get to the draft we did because we're already an hour in. But okay, so there's that draft board. Yeah, take a look at that beauty. I don't know if you can. You might have to zoom in for some of this. I don't even know if you can, but it's maybe a little hard to see. But so, as you said, Gabe, right? We had the Derby, and so Derby style basically means you pick your draft slot. So instead of just getting randomly assigned a draft spot, you pick your draft slot. So it's still randomized. So the guy that got number 1, he got to pick his team. So he chose the first overall pick. The guy who got number 2 chose the second overall pick. And then Gabe, you were number 3, and you went with the 8th overall pick. That's what you changed up the trajectory a little bit there.
Yeah.
And then I was 4th actually, and I was having a hell of a time. I didn't know what I wanted, but ultimately I ended up going with the 3rd overall pick because I wanted to nail down an elite QB. So yeah, I'm at the 3 spot. You're at the 8 spot. So you guys can kind of see how the board went here. I mean, it was those top 8 quarterbacks that went, and then it was Jefferson and Chase, and then Bijan, and then a couple more quarterbacks. And as you can see, the majority of like the 2nd, 3rd, 4th rounds there, it's mostly wide receivers and running backs. A couple tight ends, a couple quarterbacks, but pretty much the running backs and the wide receivers dominated those rounds. So I guess maybe, because I've been doing a lot of talking, why don't you talk first with I guess maybe what went into picking the 8th overall spot, and what was like your first strategy, or the first things you were trying to do once you had that pick.
Yes, I think ultimately I wanted to do to try and trade up into the first, basically using my second, third, and I think I did 5th round pick is what I was trying to trade away. And I was actually unsuccessful. I was mainly talking to the 101 owner and the 102 owners primarily. I think also the 105 guy too. But I think the talks kind of started off pretty well, but then they ultimately started to try and throw in my 24 first, which is kind of where it led. So I wasn't really able to trade up at all into the first while being able to keep my first round pick as well. So it didn't really work out for me. But ultimately, I guess my strategy behind taking the 8th pick over the 3rd or the 4th was that I thought it would be more appealing to give guys my 205 and the 305 in a trade instead of like the 210 or the 310. I thought people would like those more based on the lower numbers. But I guess it ultimately didn't really work out for me.
Well, but that's interesting, right? So you chose the eighth spot
Hmm.
over getting a higher pick to get an elite QB, or maybe being at the end of the round so you could pick back to back. You chose the eighth spot kind of towards the middle because that reflected your ultimate goal of trying to trade up for another first round pick.
Hmm. Yeah,
Right. But then, like you said, that kind of backfired because you did
didn't
that, but
work.
then you weren't able to trade
Yeah.
back into the first round. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, makes sense. Well, and then I was kind of debating similar things. I was
Hmm.
also debating like with the third round reversal. I maybe wanted to be towards the back of the first to get, a higher pick in the third round. But then I thought about it, similar to what you said. I thought about it and I was like, well, ultimately my goal here is going to be to try to trade into the first round and get another elite quarterback. So then I was kind of thinking maybe to be like around the 105 or the 106, wherever my tier break is, so I could like still be guaranteed an elite QB in case I wasn't able to trade up to get a second one to at least have one. And then at the end of the day, I'm glad with my decision, but I think common sense finally kicked in, and I was like, okay, what am I doing? Let me just take the 103.
Yeah.
In my opinion, Mahomes, Allen, and Hurts are in their own tier, especially in a point per carry. So I'm kind of glad I took that pick because then I also actually was able to trade back into the first round. But it was not where I was expecting to go. Um, so I guess maybe because I'm gonna get long-winded here, but why don't you talk about your team a little bit first and like your first
Okay.
couple rounds, what you did, how that worked out for you, and then I can get into my team.
Okay, sure. I just selected my team here, so I took the eighth spot. So I took Fields at the 108, and then I wasn't able to trade back, or I wasn't able to get the second first round pick with my 2, 3, or 4, and 5. So I picked Brees Hall at the 205 based on the point per carry format. So he was actually the second running back off the board. Bijan went at the 111, so I took Brees at the 205 because I really wanted to get a hero running back in this type of format because we did another startup actually kind of with very similar settings, and I punted at running back, and I think that was kind of a mistake after looking at the overall scoring for 2022. A lot of those running backs very much outscored the wide receivers. So I really wanted to get a hero running back, and then so I was actually able to make a trade. I'm trying to remember what this. Oh yeah, this is what it was. I think it was. I traded away my third round pick, and I think it was my eighth. So the
Yeah.
808 and the 308. No, the 808 and 305, and I got back the 607 and the 706 and a 24 first. So I think that was a really, really good trade there. Because then also these were back to back picks too as well. Because he was right next to me. So I had the 607 and the 608 and the 705 and the 706, and I got 24 first.
Yep, that's what we were talking about earlier. You weren't able to get the two elite QBs, but you traded
Mm-hmm.
back and tacked on a 24 first. And again, so yeah, what were the picks you traded away? The 305, right?
Yeah, the 305 and the 808, and then
Can
I
you,
got
can,
back 607, 706, and a 24 first.
yeah, could you not highlight your team for a second?
Oh shit,
So the 305 was Tyreek Hill, and the 808 was who?
Devin A Chain.
Okay, so you traded away Tyreek Hill and Devon A. Chain, and you got back who was the 607 and 706? Calvin Ridley and George Pick. No, George Kittle and Calvin Ridley.
Yep, and a 24 first.
And a 24 first. So you mean
Yeah.
to tell me, like, Kittle and Ridley versus Tyreek and Devon Achane? I think that could be a toss-up. Obviously, there's a lot of different positions in that trade. But then, I mean, with the format and getting Kittle, who's probably still a stud tight end, and then also getting the 24 first, like, I think it's a
Yeah.
no-brainer to take the
Mm.
24 first at that point. But anyway, I agree with that. But all right, I'm sorry. Carry on. With your team.
Yeah, so then after that, I ultimately wanted to target the tight end position based on the two tight end PPR format. So I went Hawkinson in the fourth round, which was my next pick after trading away the 305. And then actually in the fifth round, I took Kirk Cousins. I was kind of taking one of those kind of secondary tier quarterbacks. I think Kirk is a pretty solid guy, and I also matched him up with Hawkinson. Is also what I liked about that. So now I have the stack with Hawkinson and Kirk Cousins. And then I had back-to-back picks in the sixth and seventh round. So I really liked these picks. I took another tight end with Kittle to kind of stack up and kind of hoard the tight ends slightly, and then got my first wide receiver with Judy, and then I took Swift for another running back and Ridley.
Hmm. That's a solid build. That's a solid build. Like you said, you were able to move back and get that extra capital, but you have I think someone who you and I would both consider an elite quarterback in Justin Fields. You have two very high end, if not elite, tight ends, and then you still have decent depth at your starting caliber running backs and wide receivers. And obviously, we're not going to go through the whole draft board now, but you were able to get guys later on too who can help. So I think
Yeah, I guess I can just show it briefly here. So I also took Amari Cooper, Kamara, Brian Robinson. So I was trying to fill out the flex spots with running backs, and then I got Gabe Davis, kind of as a flex guy at the receiver position. I got Jamal Williams. I kind of mixed in some rookies here because ultimately I was kind of going for a competitive hybrid team. So I tried to get kind of some middle-aged players who are competitive but also still fairly young. So, yeah, middle-aged guys.
Where's that 45-year-old Tom Brady?
Yeah. So I mixed in some rookies here: Chase Brown, Izzy, and then some more tight ends: Gesicki, Darnell Washington, Hurst. And I took Zach Wilson as my third quarterback. Ultimately I would have wanted to take a third quarterback way earlier, but I got sniped a few times. I think I got sniped with, who was it? Oh, I think I was going to take Lance at the 705 actually if he was there. He got picked at the 609. That was somebody who I was eyeing there.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say probably maybe because outside of, I mean, Cousins is a solid QB too, but I'd say maybe your quarterback is not like, I don't want to call it a weakness, but it's probably not a strength.
Kind of. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
How about your team? You take a look at yours?
All right. Let's move over to the future champion of the league. Okay, so as I said, with the Derby, I took the 103. Jalen Hurts ended up falling to me, which was perfectly fine. And I tried like hell to trade into the first round to get another pick, to try to get another elite QB. And it was similar stuff to what you were saying. People were wanting my 24 first, or they wanted, like, they were not willing to give me a full number of picks back as to what I was giving up. Or some people refused to just give up their pick unless, like, I was giving up my first round pick. So, like, we're not trying to put people on blast here, but, like, the dude who had the 101, like, would not trade me the 101 unless I gave him the 103. And I told him, like, my whole point was trying to get a first round pick. So it didn't work. Until, if you could highlight my team again, we got to the 112. And actually both Anthony Richardson and Deshaun Watson were sitting there. And I know in the mock draft we just did, I took Deshaun Watson ahead of Anthony Richardson. But I took Anthony Richardson in this startup because, because of the point per carry, I think he has more rushing upside than Deshaun Watson does. Even though Deshaun Watson is a great, mobile QB too. I think Richardson has even more upside, being the most athletic QB to ever enter the NFL. Plus, I just think Watson has some stink on him from all the field issues and just not really playing for a couple of years and then being horrible at the end of last year. I think he will quickly regain his value once he comes out this upcoming season. I think he will play well. But I kind of preferred Anthony Richardson at that point. So I was able to. Now it depends who you ask, right? When we were doing the mock draft, I said the difficulty for me is Anthony Richardson considered part of that elite tier of QBs? And for me, he is, but I'm also kind of willing to take the risk. Like, even if he's not, I think the upside is definitely high enough for him to enter that tier of QBs. And because I saw like other people were not trading up in the first round, I figured I would be the only team or one of the only teams to have two elite quarterbacks. Even if Anthony Richardson, let's say maybe he's not in the top 9, but he's like, let's say he's a top 12 quarterback. He's also, I think, the type of guy that can retain his value after year one. So I really liked pairing him up with Hurts. Again, especially in a point per carry, I have probably two of the most mobile QBs in the entire league. So I'll take that. So if you could highlight my team again, por favor. So as you can see, though, I took those two, and then I didn't pick again until the, 6th round. I didn't pick again until the 6th round. Now, to get that 112, it was actually a 4-for-4 trade. So I gave up my 2nd, my 4th, my 5th, and my 11th, and I got back that 112, a 6, an 8, and a 13th. So kind of gave up a lot there, but I was very glad that I did not have to give up my 3rd round pick. As I said, it was 2, 4, 5, and 11 that I gave up. So that's what I did. And then I made another trade later on with my third round pick. So I still had my 310. I then traded from the 310 to the 507, and I got a 24 first. Okay? And then, sorry, I'm getting confused here with my own trades. But then, shortly after that, so I traded from the 310 to the 507. right? And I added a 24 first.
Mhm.
And then I packaged that 507 with my 612, and I got a ninth and another 24 first and a 24 second. So basically, those were the things I was talking about trying to do in the
Mhm.
draft. So I set my foundation with the two elite QBs,
Mhm.
and then I traded back because I think it's a flat tier. I
Yep.
got two extra 24 firsts, an extra 24 second, and some extra draft capital later in the startup. And then look at that. In the sixth round, again, I think he's underrated. Some people may think he's overrated or not worthy of the pick. But in the sixth round there, to be able to get Dallas Goedert, and still
Mhm.
get who I think is maybe not an elite tight end, but I think he's a top six, top seven at worst tight end in Dynasty. And I paired him up with Jalen Hurts, so I have the stack there between Hurts and Goddard. So I was able to get him, and then I came around in the next round and got Pat Fryermuth, who I think is also a top 6 to 7 tight end in Dynasty. Um, and then after that, so really like with this team, I prioritized the quarterbacks and the tight ends and trying to get additional capital in the future. So, then at the end of the what is that round? The sixth, the eighth round. At the end of the eighth round, there, or whatever it is, or yeah, the eighth round. Sorry,
I know it's
got
hard to
close to
see.
the face. Um, spooky. So then
How
at the
many
end of the
firsts do you have? How many
I have
firsts do you
three
have now?
24 firsts now. I
So
have three
four.
total.
So four including yours or no?
No, no, three total. I had
Three total.
mine,
Okay.
and then I traded back twice in the startup to get two more.
Okay. Cool.
But then I was still able to get Derek Carr. So, and again, we're not going to go through obviously every team in the league, but like
Mhm.
starting quarterbacks of Jalen Hurts, Anthony Richardson, and Derek Carr is probably one of the best QB rooms in the league. It
Yep.
might not be the best, but it's probably one of the best. And Derek Carr gives me the flexibility that let's say Anthony Richardson does not end up being the day one starter. Maybe just has a lackluster rookie season. Um, I have Derek Carr to kind of fill his spot. So anyway, but we don't have to go through every team here. But um, so if you can go back to my team,
Mhm.
if you highlight it again, um, so and then if you could scroll down, please, thank you. So then after Derek Carr, you see like I kind of hammered in another tight end. I got Darren Waller. So keep in mind, at this point in the draft, I had three quarterbacks, I had three tight ends, I didn't have a single running back or a wide receiver.
Yeah.
Now there's pros and cons to that. That's kind of the way I like to play Dynasty. But my wide receivers and running backs are much much worse than most other teams in the league. But then I ended up with we start three wide receivers. So my starting three wide receivers are DeAndre Hopkins, Mike Williams, and then Brandon Cooks or Michael Thomas, right? So I got those four wide receivers. And then I still got some solid running backs. Got David Montgomery, Tyler Algier. I don't know if you've heard the reports lately, but they're saying that Bijan, I believe this, Bijan is not going to get 80+% of the carries. They're still going to work
Yeah.
in
Makes
Tyler
sense.
Algier, and he was a 1,000-yard rusher last season.
Mhm.
He has the talent to at least be a viable starting option, especially in a point per carry league. So, and then later my strategy going into this, because I don't want to get too long winded here, but my strategy going into this was let other people take the running backs and the wide receivers, especially the running backs, that they think are elite. I will take the guys later on who are kind of gross or have some stink on them or who people don't like, but who, especially in a point per carry, like all I need is guys who are going to get touches. I don't need guys who are going to be hyper efficient. I don't need guys who are necessarily pass catching specialists. I need guys who are going to get touches. I think David Montgomery accomplishes that. I think Tyler Algier accomplishes that. And then some maybe guys later on who again aren't like they don't have huge upside, but they could step into their respective teams and fill a role. Elijah Mitchell, Samaje Perine, Deonta Foreman, Jalen Warren, like those are guys who potentially are one injury away from being an every week starter. So, and then you can scroll down a little bit more, I guess, if you want. It gets a little gross after this, but I really tried
Yeah.
to hammer in the facts. I mean, I got Ty Chandler after the news of Dalvin Cook being cut. Ty Chandler could be the RB2 in Minnesota. Leonard Fournette, Fat Lenny. He's a free agent right now, but I think he's going to sign somewhere eventually, and he could fill a role there too. So, anyway, I'm not going to go beyond that, but again, that was just my general strategy is to set the foundation with the quarterbacks and the tight ends, let the wide receivers and the running backs kind of come to me as the draft goes on, and now I also have three 2024 firsts to play with. So, you know, I could with this team. You never know. With the quarterbacks, you set a good foundation. I could get lucky. I could be a contender next year. Just
Mhm.
with this starting roster that I have right now, I could be a contender next year. And then I have the flexibility because I have those picks of either going all in, trading those picks to get maybe more running backs or wide receivers to boost my starting lineup,
Mhm.
or just kind of let next year play out and then have three 2024 firsts while already being maybe like a top six team in the league. So again, I might be getting ahead of myself. I also don't want to sound cocky, but that was kind of my strategy, and I'm just personally happy with the way things played out. So I'll Lavisca Chenault just went in the 20.
Woo!
a second? I can't even see.
2205, LaVisca Chenault. Let's go.
Wow. Okay. There you go. So that's where we are in this draft.
Yeah, it's kind of gross.
Yeah, around 22 out of 29 total. But
Yeah.
um, well, as always, right? We say these videos are. I think last time we said the same thing as today. We were gonna make this a shorter video, and here we are, an hour and 20 minutes into it. But I just think we have a lot to say. But
It's fun, yeah.
I think we covered most of it. I mean,
Mhm.
listen, I cannot be held responsible for this because I didn't have a pick in the second round. But tell me people don't understand the format without telling me that people don't understand the format. Travis Kelce was the first tight end taken at the 212 in a format like this. And
Mhm.
Kyle Pitts goes at he went at the beginning of the third,
301.
reversal, and then Mark Andrews at the end of the third.
Yeah, it's
Like
pretty
that's
late.
311. I almost kind of wish I kept that 310 and took Mark Andrews, but that's
Yeah.
the one that 24 first. But anyway, so we'll see how it goes. I mean, this was not a huge money, like not like a big money league, but um, these are people who are competitive. They've played Dynasty for a while.
Mhm.
Most of them, like we know some of them and gotten to know them. So it'll be interesting to see how things shake out. But we wanted to give you guys kind of a real life example of us implementing some of those strategies we talked about during the mock draft. So. Anything else you wanted to add on? I know I kind of rambled there, as I often do.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I think one of the biggest differences that you touched on was I think the tight ends compared to our mock. Because yeah, Pitts was it's Kelsey first at 212 and Pitts at the 301, Andrews at the 311. In our mock, we had Pitts at the 202, Kelsey at the 209, and then Andrews at the 204. So we picked the tight ends way earlier than what actually occurred in this actual draft,
Right.
which is interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then, I mean, also like look at the actual draft, even to an extent, like running backs got pushed down
Mhm.
past wide receivers, which again, like
Yep.
I think that's the way most people play Dynasty nowadays. But that also tells me that maybe some of these people don't understand the format. The point per carry, like, makes a huge difference. And all you have to do is go look at the points per game leaders from last year to see that there were several running backs in the top 10 of the highest point per game leaders. So
Mhm.
anyway, it'll be interesting to see. I think this was definitely a fun video to record. I know we went
Yeah.
longer than we said we would, but we should probably just assume that every time that we record, we're gonna go longer than we say
Yep.
we will.
It was a lot of fun though. Yeah, I like that.
But-
It's a fun
And again,
video.
this is startup season, my friends. So
Mhm.
get into it. I hope you guys are doing some startups, implementing your own strategies. You can even try mock drafts. You want to try different strategies, or use the actual startup drafts to try different strategies. But as usual, we are open to any questions, comments, concerns, feedback. I mean, if you guys have any advice for how we can make these videos better or more entertaining, which I don't know how it could get more entertaining than this, but if you have any recommendations, we're open to hearing them, or any questions, concerns. Not concerns. I mean,
Concerns. Any concerns? Put them in the comments.
yeah, we're not like technical support here, but yeah, questions or different strategies that you guys have, comments about what we did. We would love to hear any and all feedback. So I guess with that we can pretty much call it a wrap. Anything else you want to throw out there, or we're pretty good?
I think we're pretty good. Yeah.
Okay.
I think they're getting longer every video here.
I know. We gotta maybe like, I don't know. We listen. I guess while we're talking now, I will bring it up very quickly. We do have some ideas of videos that we
Yeah.
want to do, and I think a lot of our upcoming topics are going to be shorter because these first few videos we've done mock drafts, and those just take a
Yeah.
while. Some of the other ideas we have don't really include mock drafts, so I think we will have some shorter videos coming out. But again, we appreciate any of you who are tuning in. We do want to make this maybe a more regular thing, maybe even not every week, but every couple weeks or so. Just trying to coordinate our schedule is the hardest thing right now. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was fun, and we will hopefully come out with another video again soon here in the next next week or two.
All right. See you guys.
All right, adios.
Thanks for watching.